What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A2 Flow. I'm your host, Marilyn Spencer. With me, we have Steven, and today our special guest is Saben. Hello, Saben.
Hello.
Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you studying at HU?
Well, Saben, as Marilyn introduced, I'm now a senior. Oh, geez, I'm a senior here at Harrisburg University, studying interactive media with a concentration in purposeful game design. That's kind of my thing. Yeah.
All right, what is purposeful game design?
Well, it's pretty much the essence of general game design, but it's more aiming towards having a purpose to your game. So, like, you can make a video game about anything, but there's also games on like cool math games that teach addition, basic stuff like that. That's a very simplistic version of a purposeful game.
So I never thought about cool math games as purposeful. Um, is there anything you're working on that you could tell us a little bit more about what that looks like for those who may be interested?
For me personally, Um, well, currently, I guess for my project one, I did a more interesting thing than I'm currently doing. For my project one, I looked into how mental health can be affected by video games. So I heavily focused on virtual reality as my concept and how people being immersed in a video game could potentially help relieve them from other mental illnesses that they're dealing with. So I focused specifically on anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And I found some interesting stuff that shows that virtual reality for sure can help, which is I think pretty interesting and not a lot of people talk about.
That almost seems a little bit countercultural, I'll say, to what maybe the norm out there is about perception of video games. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. You're doing some really cool work. I think maybe our viewers are already intrigued. So, Steven, how about you take it away?
Yeah, so Saban, now let's go kind of dive in a little to your childhood a little bit because I feel like you're a lot of things that you do today may be some significance in regards to your childhood. So tell me first, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pennsylvania. More specifically, I lived in Boiling Springs for about 7 years. And then I moved to Elizabethtown, where I lived until like 18 when I moved to Harrisburg for college.
Okay, so tell me about life growing up for you. How was just life growing up going, and especially since you moved to two different cities in the states of PA.
Life was like pretty good. I guess generally, yeah, it was pretty good. My parents are great. I have a really nice older brother, so that's always nice. That generally my family is like nice for the most part. You know how families are. Some are iffy, but for the most part, we're all very well acquainted. Um, other than that, though, moving was hard, but you kind of truck through it. Thankfully, every time I've moved closer towards people I want to be with. So it always makes things easier that way. And also, every time I've moved, there's been cool opportunities. When I lived in Boiling Springs, I lived in like the woods, the middle of nowhere. And then when I moved to Elizabethtown, I lived on a farm at a mill that was made in the 1700s. It's crazy. And then now I'm here in Harrisburg, which is it's different. It's a city. Yeah, it's completely different than anything I've ever lived at.
So you went from living on a farm to then living in the city. So that must have been like a big culture shock for you. But because since I know you outside of this, you for your high school time before we jump into your college, you were doing high school online, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I was homeschooled until my senior year. Yeah.
So how was that experience for you being homeschooled and all?
I really liked being homeschooled personally. The one downside I'd say was I'm a pretty social person. So that part is kind of more difficult. Although my mom had me in like what are they called? Homeschooled groups, I guess if you want to call them, which were just like classes with some other homeschoolers. Which then we became this group of like 10 kids who were just all kind of buddies, and we learned stuff. That was growing up until like 12 or 13, and then my mom's like, here's some online programs to do, and I'm like, cool. And she's like, you can mostly do what you want though, because like school is, high school is I'm sorry to say it, uh But
Gotcha.
there's a lot of stuff that you can learn in high school, which I think is nice because it's kind of the base ground of just learning everything. But being homeschooled, my mom let me take the approach that like I was interested in all of this specific stuff. She's
Mhm.
like, why are you hyper focused in like doing extra math courses or extra history courses when you're clearly interested in this thing, which I think was really beneficial.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's really interesting. I mean, not a lot of people that I know are homeschooled to all the way to senior year. So so your senior year onwards, well, because if I remember right, that's when you started doing dual enrollment here for Hereford
Yeah.
University. So,
Yeah.
walk me through how that all happened for you.
It's actually kind of crazy how it happened. As these things are. My parents, specifically my mom, well, they're both really into antiquing, right? And we have a mill, of course, so they really like old things. So in one of our parts of our mill, they're like, "Hey, let's turn this into a mini antique store, because why wouldn't you?" And then pretty much a bunch of people came to buy antiques on a specific day, and this guy Ryan Korn, who works for our school, he shows up. Yeah, Steven knows him. This guy Ryan Korn shows up to our antique place and he's talking to my parents. My parents are nice people. And they're like, yeah, I got this homeschooler he's okay. And then Ryan's like, yeah, I mean, we're cool. We got a lot of stuff to offer. And then boom, I end up talking to him somehow. How, I don't know, but then I'm talking to him. I'm really nervous, by the way. I'm like freaking out. He's the nicest dude like I've ever talked to. He's got this big beard, he's got tattoos and everything. I swear to God, I like once he started talking, I was like, oh, I'm in there. He's so nice. This is a man I can vibe with. Uh, and then boom, and then he's like, well, you're pretty cool. And I was like, awesome. And then he's like, okay, cool. Well, you're pretty much in. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, you don't really have to apply. You're just, we're good. And then I was in. So it was really strange. It was really strange.
How was that transition going from homeschool to now being in college?
Okay. Yeah, no. It was interesting for sure. The only real experience I had outside of going to college with school was I played a high school tennis. So I was like kind of in a school occasionally for like weight training and stuff like that. So that was my high school experience. But going to the school was really it's a strange school. It's like one building. It's like 14 stories. So like already out the gate, it's pretty weird for everyone. So I think that kind of helped me ease into it because everybody's like, where the hell are we? What floor are we going to? Where's the orientation? It was great. So everybody was just like, okay, we're all kind of just like waddling into a room that a bunch of people are going into, and it was amazing. So easing into it was fine somehow. I was really surprised because I'm like a pretty outgoing person, but like I'm a pretty anxious person too. So I expected it to be a lot harder. Um, but like coincidentally through the orientation, because they made us do those connection groups. Those groups were great because I instantly knew a few people who were great and like two people who I just wanted to avoid the rest of college. And it was fantastic, honestly. And then like these two other people, they disliked their groups, they merged into our group, and they're like two of my closest friends. So like that's awesome. Which I think definitely helped me ease into it because it's like regardless, like I know these people. And then I was like, hey, when they made friends, I'm like, hey, I'm your friend Saben. Now I'm all your friends. That's kind of how I work. I just become everyone's like second buddy, which is always nice.
There's a lot there. Do your parents still have like that antique place?
They have it, yes. They don't really have it open as much because everything's like COVID and terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, they still have all the antiques, and my dad works in that. It's like his background for work's really cool. That's all I gotta say.
I
Uh,
kind of love looking at antique shops. So maybe that's like this is just unrelated. I'm just talking. Maybe that's something that like Moore and I will come down and be like,
yeah,
"Oh my gosh, look at this old barrel," or I don't know. It just sounds like
for
stuff we
sure.
do.
My dad does tours and everything of the old mill, so yeah, he's like
Okay,
so into that stuff.
I kind of love that. So I have to think of a question though because I don't know. Today it's just been so
Yeah.
yeah.
Editing.
What's
That's
that?
Thanks for the editing. I appreciate it.
Stop.
Ton.
um So, since you're a very social, outgoing person, did you find yourself getting involved in a lot of clubs or activities or groups on campus?
Oddly enough, not really. And I think it's sort of because the clubs are like a really great idea, and a lot of them are done really well. But occasionally what it kind of becomes is like a clique almost of like everybody who's in the club is like really good friends with each other already. And then like as an outsider, if you try to go into that, it's really weird. Unless you go in with multiple people. So like what was it? The esports club. I knew people when I was going into that with them, so it wasn't weird. But I tried to go to some other club meetings and I just felt awkward. And that's not their fault. It's probably a me thing as well. But it is kind of difficult to get involved in that. I feel unless you really commit it. If you're committed to doing it, then it's probably a lot easier. But I felt like it was easier to meet people there, and then just do things outside personally.
So, something we like to talk about a lot, or at least ask most of our guests on HU Flow, is about cliques at Harrisburg University. So, you're already on it talking about cliques with clubs. So, I guess I don't need to ask you that question,
Yeah.
unless you have any more insight onto cliques at Harrisburg. I know you mentioned going into a club with a couple groups. I think that's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
And then also, I would say, as a takeaway from that, maybe just acknowledge, if you're in a club, acknowledge other outside people who might be interested in getting into the club, because it can be awkward for people even if they're outgoing.
Yeah.
My other question to you, oh, it was okay. My other question to you is transitioning from homeschool to college. I also was homeschooled student. I didn't do a lot of studying. Do you find yourself developing any study strategies, or like how did you get through class?
So my first study strat is I for readings because a lot of the times professors assign a lot of reading, which I think personally is a waste because a lot of the times people just like skim it and barely get any knowledge, and then they just talk about it in class anyway. So there's like really not a lot of incentive. I hate to break it to them through the Flow podcast. Um, but my main strat is that I read the beginning of every sentence and then the end of every sentence, and you pretty much get what the entire sentence sums up almost every time. It's really useful. I told it to one of my professors, and he's like, "That's actually pretty smart." So that's a Saben certified study strat right there. Another thing is like just get your shit done. Like it's really some of it's really difficult, and like I get that, and like I've turned in some pretty mediocre assignments, but like no matter what, you could get a 10% on it, and that's like better than a zero. You know, if you turn in a really bad assignment, they will see that you at the very least put in some effort, which then they will attempt to help you. I'm garbage at math, okay? Like really, really bad at math, okay? And I have somehow passed my math classes because my professors have helped me out, except one of them, who will remain nameless. But Akeisha Belgrave is very dope, and she has helped me out a lot with passing classes. Even though I'm pretty bad at math, because she sees I put in the effort to like at least attempt to like learn, and and that's a key thing. Just like put in the effort, and it'll almost always work out, and then you can at least say you tried your best, which I think is a good thing for people on a personal level as well, to be able to feel that.
Maybe tell us about any of your experiences there.
For sure. Freshman year, I was popping in the library. Let me tell you, the freshman year library was incredible. Steven's smiling because he knows how amazing those times were.
It was crowded in that
It
crap.
was crowded and it was loud. It was definitely not a library, but they had like 20 books, so I guess it's a library. But a lot of gamers were in there, and I think it worked because there are so many gamers at our school. But freshman year low key was kind of toxic. I'm not gonna lie. I was part of that, but it was fun, and I think a lot of people were into it, and the people who weren't just like didn't go to the library, so it like kind of worked. And then sophomore year, it was still like that, and I was like, guys, this is kind of whack. This is such a freshman thing to do. you know, like we're a little older now, we know better. And then I was like, this kind of, and then I moved on to campus, and I was like, I don't, like I don't know. It gets weird because once you get a little older, you like have more places to do things, I guess. And when you're kind of new to the school and most likely new to Harrisburg in general, like that's kind of like a safe space where you can just like go and chill out. I don't mean to use safe space in that word. It's slightly aggressive at points. But you get what I mean, that it's like a place that people can just like go and you won't like get jumped or like have to worry about something, because apparently a lot of people are worried about that. I disagree. I've never had a problem in Harrisburg. I love this city a bit. But like it's a nice place to go. I think that it gets iffy depending on who's in there, definitely, because some people dominate sections. Like I would never go into the corner section of the room. That was never my area. Okay, that was, and I would only go over to the section of the windows near the banisters if I was talking to like my slightly more popular friends, I guess I could say, or more outgoing maybe, because all the outgoing ones there are just like there and they're like doing their thing, which is good for them. Everybody's kind of got their section, but it does feel very divisive if that gets the vibe across. Personally, I fit in with everyone low key, so I kind of just like hop around the library. But now there is no library, so I'm in my Discord. What can I say?
Oh my. I'm pretty sure everyone that knows you would agree to those points. Steven, what do you have for us?
Okay, so when you start bringing up the library, man, you just hit. It's like I'm gonna be real. That library be crowded. His freshman year, like his freshman year was my sophomore year. It was so crowded in there, man. Everyone knew what sections to go to. It was a movie.
Yep.
It's like basically a high school lunchroom, but the college edition. But then it's like, and also when we bring up our library, a lot of you at home might be like, "It's a library. Shouldn't you be quiet?" So our library is not a library. It's not meant to be quiet. It's meant to be a place where we can hang out. Because before we had another building that we have now called the Union, which is supposed to be the new hangout spot. The library was the hangout spot. So that's why we always say our library is our hangout spot.
The library's
But
still
yeah,
the hangout spot. I'm
oh,
gonna keep it real.
it'll forever be the hangout spot until we actually see people think the Union is the hangout spot. But it'll take time. But back to the point with Saban. So I want to jump back right into the mental health thing because you mentioned you did projects around it, and it's a very interesting take on it because people don't really think about mental health in video games because there's always that stigma around video games being very bad for mental health. But
Yep.
do you believe that it's the opposite, that video games actually can help mental health?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends, because there's all those people who are like video games are bad. And I think that's just like objectively wrong in like literally any study besides like some 4chan mom. Um so that's wrong. But I think that it could definitely influence already violent individuals to have more violent tendencies. Not necessarily that they wouldn't have them already, but I mean, like, that's with anything. That could be a violent movie as well. It could be literally any form of violent media. Video games is an easy scapegoat because it is probably the most immersive since you're actually playing. But I think for sure, as far as helping, like it helps in so many ways. I mean, there's a plethora of games that are there just to help you relax. And that's not even including virtual reality. That's just like little side scroller games that have really pretty graphics and soothing music. If you played the game Celeste, stressful as hell, but the game is so beautiful that I was like, oh, this is nice. This is calming. I'm dying way too often, but it's very calming. I'm kind of a masochist, I think. So that might not work for everyone. But what I really think is that video games, as far as mental health, like they can help so much. They're a way for people to get immersed. I even think in the way of violent tendencies that it can be a way for people to let out those emotions so that they don't act on them. I'm not a violent person and I get angry at video games. I've hit my desk before. Does that mean I'm going to kill somebody? No. Do you ever get angry playing soccer? probably people can get angry at things and it's not a forever feeling, and I think a lot of people overreact to those things, but I think it's a really good outlet for a lot of people on a number of levels, emotionally, and anger, sadness, whatever emotions you can have, video games can really help.
Gotcha.
That's
I
kind
think
of a
that's
tangent, sorry.
I mean, no, it's really this is honestly a true statement. Like, I mean, we're always video games is always the scapegoat that a lot of mainstream media likes to use to express, oh yeah, it's changing kids to do these bad things. But in reality, there's a lot of other things that we're not taking into account that could lead to these factors. I'm not saying we're saints, but at least understand that it's not the main object. So you can try to ban it as much as you want to, but it doesn't do no significance, honestly. But
Yeah.
also, now to kind of talk more about mental health. How did you manage your mental health during your times in college? Because like I said, college isn't easy. So
Yeah.
what's for you?
And I was fortunate. I made a good amount of friends freshman year through the connection group, and then kind of, like I said, leeching onto their friends, and then eventually just forming our own group of everyone, which was really nice. But then second semester was really rough because of a certain class professor. So I started seeing the school counselor because that was a way better way to deal with my emotions than anger, which was my other emotion. So I think that was super helpful. And I just ended up withdrawing from that class, which is super important to know you can do, that it's okay. You can graduate whenever, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. There's no rush to any of those things. And you can retake a class multiple times. I have friends who have taken multiple math classes over, and sometimes that's just what you do, and they've graduated. So it works out, as long as you put in the effort. But then the sophomore year, I had actually moved on to campus because originally in my freshman year, I was still a senior in high school doing my dual enrollment. So I lived at home. So then sophomore year, I moved on to campus. And it was really good and bad in multiple parts because I felt like it was nice getting to be closer with everybody, and it like gave me that college feel of like I don't have to go home every night to my parents, but like I can just like hang out with people and not have to worry about when I go back to my apartment. But at the same time, homesickness is kind of a thing. Um, dog sickness as well is what I was suffering from. That was a tragedy. Um, and mental health kind of tanks with school, and like some people are mean. But you just, the school counselor, like I said, is amazing, and there are a lot of amazing resources outside of her as well. Professors are always willing to hear you. Uh, Thankfully, there are actually a lot of nice people at our school, which is not really what I experienced at the high school. Um, and it's a nice environment. And then what was it? Junior year, that was a cluster. I'm not even gonna go into that. That's a scuffed year. And now we're into senior year, which is COVID. So it's also it's not great. I won't sugarcoat it, but at the same time, it could definitely be a lot worse. And counselors are still there, all the professors are still here, all your friends, even though they're not in person, which kind of sucks, they're still there for you. And Discord, Zoom, there's plenty of ways to stay connected, which is nice, especially during, you know.
Of course, man. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's been an interesting year. I mean, like for you guys, I know. I mean, I spent my last most of my senior year online taking classes, but that's just like for a couple of weeks. You guys are having a whole semester worth of it,
Yeah.
so the dynamic is definitely big, very different. And with that being said, I'll pass it off to Marilyn if she has any more questions you want to ask you.
Yeah, so other than the wonderful Harrisburg University building, what are some of your favorite spots in the city? Since you've talked about how much you really like Harrisburg.
Mm. Now we're getting into Saban's favorite spots. Ooh. I'm a big fan of city islands. I'm a big fan personally of late night walks, which a lot of people are very skeptical on, and I don't recommend for everyone. But if you are of the adventurous type, these are recommended spots, which also work very well during the daytime. But City Island's great. There's a nice walking area around it. It's very scenic if you go during the daytime, or if you go at night, it's just very calm. which is one of the reasons I like it. I like walking across all the bridges. There's a lot of bridges, which is great because you can just walk across them and you see the ocean or the river, not the ocean. You know what I mean? You see all the water and you see all the cars, and you're like, ah, this is the closest we have to nature, but it's nice. And I don't know. There's a lot of little trails near the water, which I personally think are the best, because you can kind of just walk by, and there's people walking their dogs, and there's people asking for money, but they're always really nice too. And the Capitol building, stunning, just a masterpiece in comparison to other Capitol buildings. Let me tell you. Burger Yum. Mmm. Slaps. All of Strawberry Square. Also some solid food recommendations. Rite Aid and Market on Market. Let me tell you, those have saved me so many nights. Although, let me tell you, this city closes early as all heck. I don't know what their problem is. This is a city. Apparently it's not. There's like two other stores that are open until like midnight. I don't know their names, so sorry for the no shout out. They're on Second Street. If you just keep walking towards State Street, you'll see them. Very nice people, and they've got pretty solid options. It's the midnight munchies. You can only accept so much. But I think that Harrisburg in general, like, just avoid Allison Hill. Just avoid Allison Hill and you're probably fine. Even there's nice. Just be careful where you go and what time you go.
So I will say, Allisondale direction, there is an ice cream place. I don't remember the name, but I went there with my roommate and my friend, and it was actually a hidden gem.
Ooh.
Scary to go to, hidden gem. So
Might be worth it though.
it kind of was. I can't lie. It was actually really good, and it hit the spot because there's like no ice cream places other
Right?
than,
The
I don't know. I
mom's
guess.
one.
So yeah, but those are some great shout outs. I think we have a lot of guests that talk about City Island and Market on Market, just the love and the community that is moms that we all have at HU. Um, so you've mentioned gaming, sports club, and another question I've taken to asking people is, what's your favorite video game? Because we do have a pretty big gaming culture at HU. Um, so if you could let us into your brain a little bit there.
Mm. That's a tough one. Oh man. I'm tempted to say Knack 2, just so anybody who watches this, if they get the meme, they'll get it. Um, but definitely not Knack 2. Awful game. Um, Maybe Call of Duty, but like I don't want to be basic, I do play other games, I swear. Um, I really like I don't want to say I like all games. I like Outlast. I like Fortnite because I'm one of those people. I like Super Smash Brothers, Pokemon. I think it's hard to pick a favorite game because there's so many games that have like impacted me so much at different points in my life that it's like there's probably like 15 favorite games, that have really just like, wow, this has made me woke as a person, which is good.
So now you got me thinking about your Project One again. And was there any game, or maybe how did you stumble into the concept of gaming to benefit mental health?
For sure. Well, my major is gaming, so I was I was forced to do something with that to put it in blunt. But of course I wanted to do something with that, obviously, because it's my major. But like that was set in stone. But I've always been interested in like mental health because like I'm not the most mentally stable. I'll keep it real. I'm better. But it goes through phases as everybody does. Nobody's perfect all the time. So it's always been something I'm interested in. And I thought that it would be nice to do something more beneficial. And as an anxious person, I know that there's some video games that have really calmed me down. Which I know other people have felt that as well. And sometimes that's in like the way of like shooting people can be really calming, but in other ways it's like, when I'm driving on this boat through the ocean and there's just some nice sea sounds and you got a little seagull occasionally calling, like it just puts you in this immersed feeling of just relief. which I thought could be really helpful with virtual reality because obviously that is the most immersive you can get at the moment. So, how great would it be to put on a VR headset and boom, you're in the middle of the woods and you're just going on a hiking trail and there's some fireflies going and you hear some animals in the distance and you can, in my case, for the one that I was working on, you were able to choose everything you wanted. So if you wanted animals around, then there would be animals that randomly come around occasionally. If you wanted it to be in the winter, spring, summer, you could choose the weather. And then there were a few other things, like there were mini tasks. Like if you wanted to throw a stick, you could throw that to a dog and it would go fetch it. It was just small little concepts I came up with that seemed generally relaxing. And it would, you're having a panic attack. You put the headset on, boom, you're in your safe place.
I really like that. I think that's something that's going to become more prevalent as discussions around mental health become more normalized and different ways on dealing with your mental health. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Yeah.
And Stephen, if you have any closing questions.
Yeah, I got three of them. First one, let's talk about IMED a little bit. So,
Yeah.
IMED, we got a lot of cool professors. Is there any professors you just want to quickly shout out? You know, maybe female. You know, I don't know. Just give me a reference.
It's hard to just pick a few. There's so many goats out there. First off, Charles Palmer, the biggest goat, I guess, at the top of the greatest of all time. In case anybody doesn't know Hill, we've got Charles Palmer. Kelly Boudreau, she's also great. Saw Liu is somebody I've been working with for my projects, and she's been a great advisor. Tamara Payton, she's really cool. Ooh, Dr. Adams. Let me tell you, Dr. Adams is the sweetest man. He's great. Justin Sabo, he's really interesting. He knows a lot about games and he's really helpful in the actual process of making games, which I think makes him kind of unique since a lot of the professors are teaching like concepts, but he's kind of like, here's your concept in a real situation. So it's cool. Oh God, now I don't want to forget any. There's so many good ones. And if I'm forgetting any, I'm sorry. Cagno, you're really cool too.
Kevin Cagnon, awesome
Kevin
man.
Cagno, very nice guy. Um, Caleb Smith is also I mean, there's so many great professors in general at our school,
Right.
which I think is one thing that stands out. It's that, like, even when the curriculum is mediocre in some cases, which I will neither confirm nor deny how often that happens, the professors are always really, really nice and they're normally pretty insightful. In that, even if your class isn't very interesting, them as people and what they can bring to the table is normally interesting. John McKnight, another professor I really like. Sorry, just had to do it.
Hey, it's all good. I mean, hey, 'cause, when I was like, when you were talking about your Saben tips, I was like that whole statement of the first and last sentence. That's something Bujo taught us when I had her to ways of going about. If you had a very long, big paragraph, just do that, and you have a basic idea of what's going on.
Yep.
And because she always noticed how we weren't really reading her packets, and we were like, I read it out of like 1% out of the whole class. So
I read everything. I don't even.
I mean, I will admit I did not read everything, but you know what? I'm graduating now.
Yeah, you're graduated. No, I've read everything since
Yeah,
like
100%.
since orientation. I
Of
read the
course,
the opening pamphlet.
of course. Well, my next question will be, Saban, you're a senior, so
Mhm.
next semester potentially might be your last. I don't know yet.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you're gonna graduate, man. So do you have any idea what you want to do after graduation, or that's something you're still thinking about?
Um. Well, I have a lot of ideas. Oh my goodness, that was a loud notification. I don't know if anybody else heard that. My ears just got blasted. Anyway, um, yeah, no, as far as graduation, it's iffy. I have a lot of ideas of what I'd like to do, and I think it's good because I've got like 4 or 5 different options that I'd be content,
Yeah.
which is all I'm really looking for at the moment. Um, so I like editing, I like management, I like obviously video games, but I've mostly been focusing on like video editing and photography and consulting and stuff like that. So that's mostly what I'm aiming for after I graduate. And even though it's not necessarily video game creation specific, a lot of it has to do with esports, the competitive gaming field. So it's all really good as it's helped out kind of figure out games in general.
Gotcha, gotcha. My last question will be, I know you're a freelancer, so would you kind of talk about what type of stuff you freelance for?
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment, I mostly do freelance editing work. So I've worked for a number of, oh God, I guess as some might call them. Um, so this guy's like Knick-Knack Paddywhack is one of the bigger ones I've worked for. He's got a 1.7 million on Instagram right now. So I was his personal editor on his YouTube for like 3.5 months. And then oddly enough, actually today he wants to start working with me again. So that's cool. I'm going to start working with this one really popular artist. So I'm going to be doing all of her social media, including running her Twitter account and her Instagram. So not only making all the content, but also the best times to post it, which is more on the management level, which I'm looking forward to. But I've also worked with teams like Atlanta Reign, the Overwatch team, or the Overwatch League team. I've done a few pieces for them. I did some work for the Susquehanna Sonics, which is an esports team located in Harrisburg. I did a good amount of work for them. And then I've also just done a numerous amount of different work, which is really fun. BHU Storms, our school's esports team. I was an assistant for 2 years, so I did recording, scrim scheduling, video editing. I did event photography and videography. I did a lot, so it's really great the opportunities I've had in esports.
Awesome, awesome. And if anyone watching home, you want to see what more about Saban's work, he has his Twitter down below. Go check it out. You know, if you want, maybe he has time for you to help him with some crazy things. So with that being
Yeah.
said, it's up to you, Marilyn, to send us out.
All right, well, we've heard a lot from Saban today from his work in video games and management and all of his career thus far. So if you're interested in that, like we said, link down below. Otherwise, guys, thank you for listening to another episode of HU Flow. As always, I'm Marilyn, and this is my co-host Steven. And today we had Saban Neale on the episode. So thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
So.